Let's do it.
In this episode of The Full Nerd, the East Coast, West Coast CPU rivalry heats up. And everything awesome at E3 on the PC. Welcome to The Full Nerd, episode 56. I'm your host, Gordon Mong, with co-host Brad Charkis on the Skype.
Hello, Internet. Hello.
Special guest Hayden Dingman. I'm not going to mess this up. I haven't had coffee, who has just been dipped in the E3 news stuff, is here with us.
Yeah, it was E3 sweat mostly.
E3 sweat mostly. And, of course, Adam Patrick Murray has control of the off switch, so don't anger him.
Currently, Russia and Egypt are going, and it's 3-1. Don't worry. It's not 3-0 anymore. Or what was it Martin said?
Martin kept saying 3. It was
nil.
3-0.
Yeah.
Like some guy, nil? Like, no.
Yeah, 3-0. Like Neil Patrick Harris.
I don't get it. I just don't get that part. But we don't want to sidetrack it too much because there's a lot of exciting stuff. And it really is the East Coast, West Coast rivalry, although from the West Coast, everything past Nevada is the East Coast. So I think it's fair.
That's true.
Which is that rivalry between AMD and Intel.
So who's going to get shot?
It is just, I don't know.
Who's the Tupac of this rivalry?
Yeah, I know, because you always think of like Tupac and Biggie, but it could also be Taylor Swift and God, I know what's her name.
I have no idea where you're going with
Selma
this one.
Gomez?
No, there's a real rivalry between Taylor Swift
JoJo
and Katy
Siwa.
Perry.
Okay.
Man,
yeah,
that rivalry is harsher than Tupac and Biggie. You don't want to like. They got the full on entourage and everything. Let me just kick this off though. I didn't even. I saw this. I'm gonna pull an audible, as someone would like to say who likes to watch football instead of soccer. Intel responses from Paul Lilly over at PC Gamer. Got to give him a shout out. I didn't see this. This is so snap. Intel responds to AMD's trolling over Core i7 8086K. As you know, if you read PC World and everywhere else, yesterday, AMD said, hey, if you want one of those Core i7 8086 processors, those limited edition parts, up to 40 people can enter a contest, and we'll give you a Threadripper 16 core instead of that puny, 5 gigahertz 6 core chip. And they basically also says stuff like, yeah, we want to talk about the next 40 years of computing, not looking back 40 years. We're looking forward, like not looking back. It's like so much like attitude, right? That's just. But wait, check this out. I'm really surprised because normally, and of course, it's not on here. What happened?
I mean, it's pretty ambitious of AMD to say they'll be around in 40 years. So
yeah, it is. But things are looking good.
A lot less so than it was a couple years.
Yeah,
ago.
sure,
a lot less so. And of course, look at the frowny face. Where the hell did the tweet go?
What Intel did is they answered back with that, and they said, "Hey, if you guys just wanted a sample, you guys could have asked us."
Yeah, that was it.
Helping us celebrate.
Damn.
That's like from the actual official Intel, gaming.
This is getting hot.
It's getting hot. I mean, it's
They're
sort of
putting
like
out
in a nerd
diss
way,
tracks.
right?
They've got their diss tracks ready to go.
That's it.
Well, so for anyone who hasn't followed it that close, I was at E3, doing work. I didn't get to follow it, but give us a little more backstory. I remember what happened at Computex. Fill us in. What's going on?
Well, we want to get into the Core Wars thing. So, Intel did a demo of a 28-core CPU, unknown ? Demo. And then the next day, AMD did a demo of a 32-core CPU, and things actually got really bad for Intel from that point because it was 28 cores, liquid chilled, heavily overclocked, all cores to 5 gigahertz. Right.
Not just liquid chilled. The on-stage demo, they said, look, it hits 5 gigahertz. But what they didn't say is it was like some aquarium grade, like 1500 watt TDP cooler that had like insulated cables and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it was a server motherboard because exactly the next day, as expected, Asus and Gigabyte showed off, hey, check this out. We have the 28-core system. It's like, this is like a $3,000 motherboard, right? It's 6-channel DIMM and like 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 PCIe. It's like, what? How is this even possibly consumer?
I mean, it's not. That's the point, right?
Yeah, and it's not. And, and
like, let's be real. Their 10-core chip is not consumer.
Well,
even their 6-core chip is barely a consumer part in terms of what people actually want to shell out for a CPU.
Right. I mean, that gets us into the existential discussion of do consumers really need? I mean, what's a consumer? Of course, do you really need more than 8 cores?
Not right now. No.
Not for gaming, but I think it is. So many people are taking up YouTube and starting their own Twitch streams that I think there actually is use to some extent to have so many cores.
Yeah, I think we're still topping out around like 8 though. Like I feel like after that point, the number of cores that you need goes down steeply for like anything that you could do. Like I have a 6-core CPU at home, and I don't think that I've ever hit load on that thing, even like streaming out to Twitch or whatever. It is so hard to like max out the capabilities of that chip unless you're doing like very heavy video rendering or benching that thing or whatever.
I mean, and that is the thing, right? It's hard to justify it. And of course, AMD sort of started this whole war with the 16-core and then actually, I guess Intel technically launched the 18-core first. They had 18 and 16 last year, and now we're at 38 and 28, 28 and 32. It's just like
at the 28, I think it was real cool that they went out and they showed that it could go to 5 gigahertz, even if it's like this wildly crazy rig. I think it's really cool that they say, hey, look, this can get to 5 gigahertz.
Right.
But it just seems like that's not going to be anywhere near retail in the near future.
No, and actually, I had they had a small talk with some of us afterwards. Of course, everything was winding down. We were just having beers and talking about it. They're like, it was always intended for us to say it was an overclocking demo. A lot of people sort of said, oh, they're lying to us by saying you're going to get a 5 gigahertz 28-core CPU. And their argument was like, well, no, we never intended to say that. We're saying, hey, look at this cool ass thing you could do. And their argument is like, it was actually it was going to be said, it was in the script, and also, look, if we wanted to hide it, we wouldn't have put a case window on it and had these massive tubes running underneath, right? So
that said, it was the timing of the omission. It was pretty curious because that was right around the same time that they were announcing the 8086K.
Right.
The 40th anniversary part, and that actually does go to 5 gigahertz. Some of them say, hey, check it out, 5 gigahertz. And then here's also 28 cores with 5 gigahertz.
Sure.
I mean, it's...
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to say it's not suspicious because, I mean, they rarely get the benefit of the doubt, so everybody thinks it was them trying to pull the wool over our eyes. I will say, though, they said, like, look, what you saw demoed is just simply 28 cores, end of this year, Q4, I think is what they're saying. That doesn't mean, assuming it launches... It doesn't mean it's going to have 6 channels of RAM, which is the demo, CPU that everybody saw. It doesn't mean you're going to have the server motherboard. It doesn't even necessarily mean it's going to use that socket or that it will have a, Core i9. We don't know. It's just simply, it's a mystery. Intel is always loath to talk about an unannounced product because they always get sued by everybody and investors. They got a lot of money to lose. So they really are sort of handcuffed. But yeah, it's a bad look. There's no way to say like it wasn't a bad look.
But it's like a cool. My thing is like it's just cool to see where this stuff is going. I felt very much the same coming out of the NVIDIA ray tracing stuff at GDC, and then we saw it again at E3. They had some more demos on that.
Yeah,
and it's just cool because I feel like we're finally reaching a point where I feel like we've been on 4-core as the standard for so long now. It's cool to see the CPU side pushing that forward. It's cool to see our GPUs getting to a point where we can do some really cool stuff on that side.
Right.
It's cool to look at the demos that these companies are doing and be like, oh, in 10 years, like this is where we'll be. I don't expect any of that stuff to be consumer grade for a long time, but it's cool to see a roadmap because I feel like the last couple of years, it's felt a little bit like everybody was floundering. It felt like Intel was just sort of like, well, we're still selling 4-core.
You keep buying it.
4-core chips, so why do we need to upgrade? And like that is also informed by like where the consoles are at. The consoles are still holding everybody back at this point. Nobody really wants to invest heavily.
They have 8 cores.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
8 cores.
8 cores. And so like there's a reason that this stuff kind of lulls in the middle of that console generation, but it is cool to finally see like, okay, in 5, 10, 15 years, this is where we're going. We're going to have some amazing stuff. Even if right now NVIDIA needs 4 cards to run this crappy ray tracing demo at like 10 frames per second. Like,
I did show that to Gordon, the case and the custom shrouds and stuff. Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's one of your DGX
and it was running
systems.
hot.
Yeah, it's an amazing little case. I put my hand on it and almost burned my hand. Like, it was nice and warm. And they were running that thing every time you would turn the ray tracing off, you would gain like 20 frames per second. So
and that's with 4 cards.
yeah, that was with 4 cards. So yeah, like, that stuff is 5 or 10 years out from being consumer ready. But
who says multi-GPU is dead?
Yeah, right. But it's like super cool to see that stuff, and it's cool to see Intel getting in on it finally, because I feel like Intel for a long time, because they were so dominant, was kind of like, we just kind of can float here.
Yeah, and it's really tough. I've been talking with people about this. From Intel's perspective, you got to realize they've been pushing to get developers to use more cores for a long time, and they've kept it's a battle they've lost. I mean, this goes all the way back to single core processors. They've been getting people to push multi-core because why not sell you more, right?
Yeah.
It's never really taken on after all these years, and I could see Intel saying, yeah, sure, we really need to push out an 18-core or 28-core part to compete with AMD, right? But it's chicken and egg, right? Because AMD's like, hey, we'll give you 8 cores for $250. You have a reason now for developers, because everybody's going to have 8. I mean, I could see 8 cores on desktop being the standard configuration in 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's only because AMD's willing to bring the price down, which is what Intel will never do. So that's the bad thing on them.
Well, and it's been weird because I think that there's been a lot of stuff that I thought would catch on faster that has not. So I thought by now DirectX 12 would be a big deal. Yeah. And it hasn't been. And so we find ourselves in this lull where there's a lot of cool hardware that nobody's taking advantage of because we're still barely touching DirectX 12 with most games.
Right.
Like, it's weird to me that it's still notable. We're what, 3 years out from the DirectX 12 reveal or something? That's like enough time that like we have done full game lifespan development cycles.
Yeah.
And it's still noteworthy when a game is DirectX 12 at launch. Like, that's still not the standard 3 years later. That's bizarre to me. Like, I thought that stuff would really push us forward in a way that it hasn't. And so
it's because they linked it to Windows 10. It's Windows 7 still like 50% of the world. So
yeah, it's starting to change. That Steam hardware survey, we're starting to see like the numbers dip on Windows 7. But
oh, that's good.
But I mean, how many? I guess to be fair to Microsoft, those Windows 7 boxes, they ain't running like 8-core processors and 1080s.
Yeah,
so
there's not a huge reason for them to use DirectX 12 over there.
But and for people who have been around this game for a long time, there's always these times where you're just railing at developers. It's like, support this card, support this feature, support whatever, and just like years and years and years. It's
just fascinating because I feel like there's been other stuff. Like we've seen a lot of NVIDIA's tech end up in a lot of games over the last couple of years, and DirectX 12 adoption has not been that static or has not grown in that same way. It's been sort of like, oh yeah, like this game is going to support DirectX 12 3 months after launch or whatever. Like, that seems to be the standard way it's gone for a while. Really only Square was the only company that was really pushing DirectX 12 for the last couple of years. And now they shed Hitman, so who knows whether that'll be DX12 again.
And of course, the important thing for people who are wondering, DX12 I think matters for us who have lots of cores.
Yeah.
Ideally, you'll get games
ideally
that
it would take advantage.
All those CPU cores.
That's the thing. Like, so Intel announces this 28 core, AMD announces this 32 core chip, but on the gaming side, I'm still playing games that are just pegged on one core. Like, this is still a common thing. The most I've ever seen a game use is like 4. As far as like standard like console centric games, strategy games, you sometimes get some actual core usage, but a lot of those like Tomb Raider, all the like console-y third-person games, first-person shooters, all those are still using like 1 core, maybe 2, maybe 4.
Your experience, because one of the problems is benchmarks don't really tell you the whole story. So you're saying in all the open world games you're running through, because generally more cores are better for open world games is the what everybody believes, but
it like makes a difference up to a point, but like it's still not, the 28 core is not going to be a thing that you're like, oh yeah, my graphics card is really taking advantage, or my CPU is really taking advantage of this.
I think it's more like you can do gaming and something else.
Yeah,
and something.
I mean, that's
else.
not, like I bought a 6-core CPU this time because I was doing video stuff at home. It had nothing to do with games because every game I played still runs fine on a 4-core CPU. Sure. Most of them still run fine on a 2-core CPU. That's like only in the last 2 years have they started to be like, no, you need a 4-core CPU for this game.
Right.
Yeah, it's just kind of disappointing. Like, it's cool to see that tech, but for me on the game side, and that's where most of the consumers are, I believe, on the PC side, there's just like not a huge incentive at the moment to upgrade, and the stuff that I thought would incentivize that, like DX12, has just kind of been a bust so far.
So, I mean, the good news is there's still parts that are affordable out there.
Yeah.
So 8700K, 2700X is still sort of generally what most people are going to build for gamers.
Yep.
And what we're talking about right now is part of the reason I find that new 8086K chip pretty interesting. Is their new limited edition part that was also announced at Computex. And people are kind of pooping on it, to some degree, saying it's $75.
Well, even AMD is too.
For a better binned 8700K. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, sure, if you're going to say that, sure, that's cool. But if you go and you look at, there's a site called Silicon Lottery that'll like fix your chips up, make sure they're nice, hit overclocks to a certain degree, and then sell you these chips guaranteed to hit certain amounts for a higher price. Every single one of the 8086Ks hit 5 gigahertz. Some of them go all the way up to on all cores.
Oh, wow.
And some of them go all the way up to 5.3 gigahertz. And that's what games are looking for these days. Mm-hmm. So people have been dumping on that chip to some degree, but I think that's a really interesting chip.
Well, the Bastiliwi over on Twitch, I always get that wrong. He said, who would trade in the 80, or they're talking about the promotion with the AMD offer. Like, would you rather go with an 8086K or a 1950X? Personally,
depends
you guys
100% on your use case.
Yeah.
Because if you're a gamer, not necessarily even a pure gamer, but predominantly a gamer, you want that 8086K. There's too many letters in that. It's messing up their standard scheme. Because like I said, that'll get you that cores count, the 6 cores, 12 threads at a high speed. But if you're going to be doing video production, Twitch streams and stuff, then it might make a little bit more sense to swap it out for the 16 cores, 32 threads of Threadripper.
Right. Yeah, and I really do think if it's sort of, if you're 70% gaming, go for high clocks. If you're 70% work, like Adam, video editing, 3D renderer, you want, give me that. I'd be ready for the 32 core. You'd be like, if you're a 3D renderer, it's like, you'd want 32 cores. So. Mm-hmm.
So, and they also mentioned something about a AMD offer on Twitter where you could trade it in.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. That back and forth. They're just kind of like throwing shade at each other. Like,
yeah, it's fun. It's cool to see them stepping into that.
Yeah, and competition is awesome. I mean, look at what we've got. I mean, I actually did a chart where I went back and I looked at all the high HEDT, as Intel's always called it, and everybody now uses it as a high-end desktop. Basically means, badass big machines. And I went all the way back to the original Nehalem part, which was arguably the first HEDT part, because later on they came out with the smaller socket. And it was like, quad core, 6-core, like for like 5 or 6 years, mm-hmm. and then it just went like hockey sticked up in just the last 2 years, right? Yep. You can guess right, because it's the Ryzen effect, as they call it. So we're like 16, now you're at 32. It's insane, So
yeah, it's cool, and it's nice to see AMD in a place where they can compete and they feel like confident enough that they can talk smack to Intel, because like 2 years ago, if AMD had talked smack to Intel, everybody would just roll their eyes. Like the AMD devotees would have been like, oh yeah, AMD's sticking it to the man, but they were like not in a position where anybody could have taken that seriously.
Why did you just trade?
I remember
KB Lake for one of our FX parts.
I remember one of the earlier episodes you were joining us. It was before Ryzen came out.
Yep.
You're like, they're going to have to prove it to me. I'm going to have to see what they can do, because they...
And that's the thing. I feel like they finally did on this side, on the CPU side. I feel like on the GPU side, they're still a total mess, and it would be very hard for them to like talk smack to NVIDIA and have anybody take that seriously.
But it's tough.
And the Steam hardware survey, speaking of that, like those numbers are looking dire for AMD on the GPU side these days.
I thought it actually got better.
AMD, last time I looked, was down to like 8% market share on the GPU side.
That changed like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Is it back up a little?
Valve said they changed the algorithm because it was like overcounting like the gaming bars that they have in China and Asia and stuff.
Yeah.
So like the same system was getting counted multiple times.
Okay.
So now it's balanced out to before what it was. So AMD has like 20-25%.
Okay, that's better. Yeah, because it was looking very dire for a little bit there. But yeah, I still don't like. They don't have like the name cache over there or the parts to talk smack. Whereas like I feel like on the CPU side, when they talk smack now, it's like you actually can listen to it and be like, oh, okay, this is.
They definitely don't have the high ground. They definitely don't go like, what do you want a 1080 Ti for? You could step up to a fake. It's just
and that's the thing. I don't think that they've won that CPU battle. I don't even think they're on equal footing with Intel yet. But I at least feel like they're slowly chipping away at that position in a way that people are starting to pay attention to, and Intel is not automatically the default anymore for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean that is. Right. That's
what I'm most excited about out of this Computex, because up until Ryzen came out last year, it was only been a year. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Intel quad core is what you had. If you wanted more, you'd spend $1,700 on a 10-core chip, or you just gonna stick it out with a
1723.
Stick it out with a quad core. But I like that now, like especially at this Computex, we are getting the 808 6K. That's a chip that cracks 5 gigahertz, and we're seeing 32 core chips.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's different things for different people, and I think that's great that we're finally getting around to that.
Well, here's a good relevant question from Lopez 580 on YouTube. Will DirectX 12 be skipped for DX13, or will we just keep sticking with DX12 for now?
I think we'll get DirectX 12 coming up. I still just think the adoption's been really slow, and I think part of that has been there's a lot of behind closed doors talk about how long dev cycles are going this generation as we get more and more photorealistic games. Things take longer and longer. So you have a couple of houses like Ubisoft that still manage to crank out an Assassin's Creed all the time, but it's because they basically are like factories over there, and they have 12 studios working on every single game all the time. Most studios are not like that. So we've got we saw a lot of stuff at E3 that we'll talk about later, like Dying Light 2. Like that game is 3-4 years in development at this point. That game, Dying Light came out 2015, I want to say. That sounds right. 2015.
Yep.
So yeah, we're talking, it's been 3.5 years since that game came out, and it's going to be another half year until that game is out, or 9 months. These dev cycles are going like really, really long at this point. And so if you think about, hey, DirectX 12 was announced 3 years ago. Some devs probably had access to it before Microsoft made that announcement, but we're still talking a 4-year, 5-year turnaround on some of these games. I think the next 2 years we'll hopefully see the tipping point, and DirectX 12 will be more popular. But it has been a lot longer than I thought it would be to get some of those games out there.
Yeah.
I always thought it was crazy that Microsoft didn't continue the free offer for Windows 10, because I actually genuinely do think that's a big part of the problem. Because for to get the ideal DirectX 12 performance that we all hope for, you have to build your game up for DirectX 12. Mm-hmm. And if you do that, you're locking your game out of 50% of the potential market. And I think that's part of the issue. And with Microsoft pushing services in Windows 10 and stuff so much, I'm shocked that they still don't just say, hey, if you have Windows 7, upgrade to Windows 10.
Yeah, it makes you think that they realize it's a valuable revenue stream they want back.
Yeah.
Because from what I understand, the price of Windows for OEMs have all gone up, especially for high core count machines. It's interesting, kind of sticking it to gamers. And, the fact that it's not free, they're just like, hey, why should we leave this, $100 million on the cutting room floor?
So I guess that's my thing, is I feel like they should have offered it direct to consumers who are building their own PCs for free, and then continue to sell it to OEMs who are going to pay that license anyway. What are they going to do? They're going to start running Linux on their OEM machines? Probably not.
Steambox.
I feel like they could have gotten away with hey, you can get Windows 10 Home for free if you're building a PC at home, and that captures that whole gaming market and then ushers those people into DirectX 12. And then the people that weren't going to build their own, they don't know that they're paying for that Windows license included in that box anyway.
So
I don't mind them charging for home builders. I just think at least an upgrade from Windows 7.
Yeah, true. That too.
They've already got that license fee.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, really, definitely. I do wish that the free offer hadn't gone away, so it should still be out there. One thing I want to ask, though, because I love playing this game. Everybody loves playing the game. How much... And I will say the first CPU to arrive will be, because I got to say, I held one in my hand. It was a production second-gen Threadripper.
Mm-hmm.
That baby's going to be here soon. How much is AMD going to charge for the 32-core and 24-core parts?
Oh, boy.
How much is 16 right now?
16 is about $800 on the street. And AMD actually said, Jim Anderson says, you know what? Ain't nobody buying the 12-core part. You know, you go in, you go buy eggs. It's like, why would I only buy 12? The 16 one is like $1 more. You go to the theater, 25 cents for the large. Give me the large.
E. Lopez 580 thinks 1,500.
Nah, that seems too high.
Yeah, too high.
I feel like if they're going to really hit it, they're going to hit with... I would love to see them hit $999 on that. On the 24, I think that would be a big coup.
Yeah,
that would be. I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, well, if we're talking about 800 for the 16 core, like that doesn't seem like a huge step to add 200 for 24.
Yeah, that's street price. I think it's still actual list is $999.
Okay,
but street is 800, and it's been 800 for months and months and months. So 800. So
yeah, I feel like they could hit 1,000 for the 24. It would be bold of them, and they might not choose to. They don't really have a reason to because Intel's prices are way higher. But I could see them hitting that. 32, I have no idea.
Over on Twitch, Bastel, I hope I got that right this time, and Hitman 45 say 1,200
for the 32.
I guess they didn't say so.
I will go 1,750 for the 32.
Oh, that's high.
1,250 for 24.
Wow, Brad's wagering high.
Wait, so you're saying what? Somebody should write this down.
Brad, this is
where's that eating paper?
Where's that rice paper?
Here, I'll write this.
There's no rice paper out here, man. I was eating real paper, and that was not pleasant.
So
there's no such thing as rice paper. What are you talking about?
Wait. So you're saying how much? You're saying
1,750 at launch for the 32 core. Because Intel's 18 core is $2,000. No, $1,800. Their 20 core is $2,000, right?
Yeah,
it seems reasonable. It just also seems really high. Like,
how many people are going to buy a 32 core part if you need it? I mean, $1,750.
Let's rewind the clock and say, who's going to buy a 16 core CPU? What are you crazy? You know what? Again, it really is that movie theater. Soda effect. Hell yeah, I'll give you that 25 cents for the extra large. I want the extra. I don't think anybody. I think they're right. I don't think anybody's gonna buy the 24 core. I think it's gonna be by the 32. Okay, I'm gonna agree. I think 1,500 list on the 32, and
that's a lot of cores for $1,500. That's great.
Yeah, if that and 11. We'll say 1,100 for the 24 core part, which is already above the Intel. I'm just, the 7980X actually had come down in price, but I'm seeing it on Amazon right now for like $2,000. So supposedly it had a huge price cut to $1,800, but it doesn't look like it's shown up yet.
I'm gonna Price is Right rules and just say 1,400.
I don't believe in that Price is Right rule.
$1.
That's fundamentally wrong. Now, for millennials who have no idea, there's this thing called television.
I'm a millennial. What are you talking about?
Right. For millennials who have no idea, there's this thing called television, and after school, when they would run these game shows.
Yes.
And then Price is Right, you would guess how much does this Pixel 2 XL cost, and then. Elena would say $5, and I would say, no, it cost me $800. And she would say, I'll give you $5 for it. So, on the Price is Right rule, if the actual phone costs $4,
$7.99.
If it costs $7.99, and you guess that it costs $800,
yeah, you'd lose.
You would lose. But because Elena guessed $5 for this Pixel XL2 with 128 gigs of RAM, or storage, she would win.
Yeah.
So that is why the Price is Right rules are wrong. Because I was only $1 off, and she was like $795 off.
Not to be that guy, but you're sitting here giving crap to millennials who don't know about TV. But if you watch The Price is Right, you would know that came on at 11 o'clock in the morning, not after school.
Oh, well, I watched the repeats. I was in school, Brad. I wasn't like you hanging out behind the gym smoking a cigarette,
watching Price is Right.
Let's go watch Price is Right.
We actually used to watch Jerry Springer, like when we would education or whatever.
Oh no!
I just like Gordon's very timely rant about the Price is Right rules.
Yeah.
20 years later.
Also, Rusty says the price is wrong, Gordon.
It's going to be $1,500, Rusty. $1,500.
1,400, and I'll win.
$1,750. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's $2,000 out the bet.
Wait, so Hayden, what is your prediction?
1,400. I'm just going
14 for the 32 core?
I'm going to be the lowest. Yeah, I'll be the lowest because then.
And what about the 24?
I'm going to go $1,000 for the 24.
They can't. And the reason why I don't think it'll be 1,750, which I would normally say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, is that AMD has anticipated Intel cutting prices. Sort of like, or at least even if they don't undercut them with price, they want to be at a comfortable place where you go like, why the hell would I buy 8700K for $350 without a cooler when I can get this 2700X for $320 with a cooler? That's a pretty good cooler, right? So they're just offering value because they're pretty much one-to-one on the performance, and like, holy smokes, you're getting all this other extras.
Yeah, I'm an optimist. I just want AMD to come in real hard and be like, no, we're gonna take over the entire CPU market.
All right.
My guess is.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say my guess. 32 is 1,500. 24 1,250. So
wait, 32 for how much?
1,500.
He's taking your
my bet.
Well,
yeah, your bet.
No, because you're saying 24 at 1,100. I'm saying 1,250 for 24.
Yeah, but I'm saying 15 for the 32 part. Nobody wants the 24, Adam. You don't want the medium soda. You either get the small one or the one the size of your head. Because it's like, that's how it is in the movie theater, right? You know?
Yeah.
It's okay if you make it a diet.
That's all the option.
Yeah, it's just water with food coloring at that point, and ice. And of course, what they do is fill it up with. You ever notice, like, if you fill that cup up with ice, you only get like about 8 ounces of soda.
Yeah.
It's just all ice.
Then you got to walk back.
Yeah, when I go to Taco Bell and I order my Baja Blast, I say no ice, so I can get as much Baja Blast.
It comes out cold anyway.
Yeah, I say it because I found out that the ice maker in most fast food places is full of mold because they never clean it properly. So
perfect.
There's your pro tip for the day. Don't get ice at fast food places.
How'd you find that out?
This was like a big Reddit thread at one point. Everybody was talking about the grossest parts of fast food establishments, and all the people that worked at various places said the ice maker was always the grossest thing.
All right, that's good to know.
But everything in all of people actually knew the food preparation areas and all the dark secrets of.
Oh yeah, I don't want to know.
You would not eat outside.
That's why I can't eat there. I can't get the ice anymore.
And then if you knew how everything packaged in the store was prepared, you wouldn't eat that either. So you would have to basically hunt for your food. Basically,
it's pretty easy in San Francisco.
Yeah, but then you'd find out. Wait. That cow's been eating poo this whole time? I'm not going to eat that. What are you going to do? I don't know.
Sorry. So there's a guy in YouTube, Marcaswell BMD. He says they're going to slot into the same exact prices as the other ones. So you're getting the more cores for the same prices.
Oh,
see,
this guy's nuts. This guy's nuts here.
I asked for guidance. So, like, I was like, are they going to keep the 16 and 12 core around? And I think they're like, kind of like, it may or may not stick around. So it may coexist.
If it doesn't stick around, maybe there's a case to say, hey, slot it in at the same price. You're just getting more cores.
See, that's what I'm saying. I think that $999 price point,
I could see
real
that.
nice.
See, I got to say, this is the nice thing about AMD is because you get excited about guessing about the prices.
Yeah.
Because AMD always.
I mean, I get excited with Intel too. You want to talk about that 28 core?
You don't.
That 28 or the 28 core Intel. I'm going to guess $7,000 for that one. And,
well, no, the chip itself will be $3,000, but the motherboard will be another $3,000.
Good.
See, that's the problem, right? I mean, you get excited about AMD because you're just like, oh, it's going to be $800. You're like, hey, we'll give it to you for $650.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's why I aim low with them because it seems like they always are beating my estimate.
There's no excitement about when you guess what Intel high-end parts are going to be.
I mean,
like $999, we're going to give it to you for $998. Yeah, okay.
Well, we got people in the chat saying that they did it with Ryzen, second gen Ryzen, and it was actually cheaper, kind of. So
yeah, it's possible. I mean, yeah, it's possible.
I'll come back and eat that paper. You can count on it.
Don't worry, I've got it written down.
Yeah,
this
good.
time.
Yeah, and AMD does, and I got to say, AMD likes playing the good person, good guy, good gal, as they say these days, and they like sort of like, hey, we're giving you all this, but if Intel basically fell off a cliff and AMD were the only game in town, be like, yeah,
they'd be a
32-core
nightmare
Threadripper
too.
would be $24.99.
I'm changing my price.
So
That Ryzen comment just made me think I'm going to the 1500 camp as
What?
well. Because that Ryzen 7 2700X and 2700 are 8 cores for $300. Just quadruple it up, man. Give them some overhead, $1,500.
All right.
Now 3 of you have the same bet. This seems like collusion.
it does make you
pressure.
wonder what
No pressure,
everybody
AMD.
expects. It tells you about what we should really expect. That 32-core part, everybody really expects $1,500.
Yeah.
And of course, I guess one of the problems is AMD always gets people super it's always cheaper than what you guess, and then be like, yeah,
Well, we have to give it to them.
gotta maybe, yeah, we want to make money on this. $17.99.
Nah, that's hard.
It's about expectations. Oh wait, how much time do we have left for E3? Did I burn all the time?
We have not burned all our time.
Okay.
We got some time. Let's
Should jump in, talk about games.
'cause I want to talk about games because I understand E3 is all about PC gaming.
Oh no!
Whoops.
E3
And now for that
sounds
other shit.
great.
And now for E3. There we go.
Maybe we
What
should
was
put a
it?
sticky on that button.
I was too busy with my
E3 all about PC gaming.
I was too busy with my my Razer fidget spinner that glows in the dark.
Yeah, they did give us that. That was some good
Watch
swag.
watch
Oh,
this.
really?
Watch this. Hold
What'd
on.
you do with your Razer fidget
Hold on.
spinner?
I mean, it's at
Hold
my
on.
house. I didn't bring it into the office.
There we go.
today.
Glow in the dark. You like that?
It's very pretty.
Kind of see it. Anyway.
Yeah, we can talk about games. What do you want to know about, Gordon?
All right,
World of Warships not at the show this year.
What did you
Why-
What did we see
why
that you were
doesn't
like, hey, I
Wargaming
wonder
go?
if Gordon would switch over to this?
Skull and Bones.
Yeah, Skull and
Skull and
Bones, I
Bones.
think. Yeah, the Assassin's Creed sailing game that's not actually Assassin's Creed branded.
Really?
Yeah, you could sail around. It's like old tall ships, so you can run around as a pirate, sink other vessels.
No, because I mean it's about the ship combat. I honestly
I mean, it is ship combat. That's the whole game. It's all just ships.
but how do you control the ship though?
You are the ship.
Oh,
You're-
okay.
You're sailing the ship.
Just like World of Warships.
Yeah.
I used to be into
I
Other
used to
games?
be into video
I might
games.
check it.
Used
Hey,
to be
World
the-
of Warships is a great game. Man.
I believe you, but it wasn't at E3. I can't. There's nothing I could tell you. We didn't get a behind closed door demo with Wargaming this year.
All right, you know what? I'm going to tell you what the thing is, and it's not even an E3 thing. The thing that's going to get me off World of Warships will
Yeah.
be Battlefield 5.
Okay, I mean that is technically an E3 thing. We
Yeah.
did play it there.
Yeah, he
I'm
did.
excited. I mean, really, the Star Wars things were kind of disappointing. Battlefield 1.
Yeah, you didn't like Battlefield 1,
I'm sorry. I feel like if I could get a refund, I would. I just don't play it. It just doesn't.
But why didn't you like Battlefield
The game
1,
was
but you're
so
excited
good.
for Battlefield 5? That's what I don't.
Because he likes World War II.
Because World War II.
Yeah, is it just the M1?
It's yeah. I
It's
mean,
like hearing that
It's,
ting.
Yeah.
It's a more modern kind of like.
Yeah, okay.
And it was just like when I think of World War I, it's like, hey, you got any mud? Yeah, I got some mud over here. Oh, they're blowing the whistle. It's time to go up and get slaughtered, run into a machine gun fire. Right? That's what World War I is about. Like,
yeah.
World War I combat in Battlefield 1 seems a lot more mobile than I would expect, hiding in a mud pit waiting for
Yeah, no, I mean it was a very loose take on World War I think. So Battlefield 5, we could start there. Like we saw that on, or I saw that on Saturday at EA Play. That sounds right.
Was that set? Yeah, that was Saturday.
And we played some multiplayer, and that game seems really good. That's about all I got. It seems like Battlefield 1 with those World War II weapons. Very pretty.
That alone, I'm sold.
Yeah, well, and I really like. So one of the things that you wouldn't know because you didn't play much Battlefield 1 is they added a mode called Operations. That was a new multiplayer mode that combined traditionally they had Conquest, right, the flag capture mode. Then they had Rush back in like Bad Company 2, I want to say.
Yeah.
And that was like point capture type mode. Operations kind of combined all of that, so you would have these maps that had like 6 stages worth of objectives to get through. Some of them would be Rush, some of them would be Conquest, and it would be played out over 2 maps. And so you would be basically there was an attacking team and a defending team, and the defenders were trying to make the attackers run out of tickets before both maps were up.
Okay.
So they've brought that mode back for Battlefield 5, except they've expanded on the different, like each chapter of these maps now has like a different setup. So the first one that we played, it was this map in Norway, and the attackers start out as allied paratroopers. And so the way they are entering the map is like flying out of these planes. It's cool. It like kind of like tells a story about the multiplayer, like these battles through the multiplayer matches instead of it just being like a team deathmatch style romp the whole time. It's like, hey, no, this was like a real battle and it kind of went through these stages. And so I'm curious to see what they do with that. Like I'm hoping we get some of the like a Battle of the Bulge maybe or something where it's like these iconic battles. Maybe bring back Midway again.
Yeah.
Well, and I also heard that you don't have to be a medic to help revive people.
You don't. No.
So,
and
I think that can help some too.
You can do like a hand grasp, pull the guy off the ground, and I was like, that guy just got shot in the face, like just like lifting his corpse back up.
So no need for medic class.
No, there's a bunch of classes. Like the medic can still hand out health kits so that you don't have to go down all the way,
and he gets them up faster too.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a really cool. Like I thought Battlefield 1 was great. We gave it Game of the Year actually. I thought.
Yes, I know. That's why I bought it.
I thought that game was fantastic. I thought they were like war stories. Their vignette style single player campaign was really cool. They're bringing that back again. They've promised that they're not just going to do so. Like Call of Duty went back to World War II last year.
Yeah,
and they just did like it's Normandy again. Like it was just Band of Brothers for like the 800th time. It's kind of cool. Battlefield 5. They seem to want to get away from that. So this Norway map was the only one that they were showing. But they've promised it's not just going to be like, it's D-Day again or something like that.
But is it?
I'm hoping.
Go ahead.
You can go ahead.
No, you should go.
I'm hoping that. Okay, I'll go ahead. I'm hoping that you kind of alluded to it somewhat in your write-up. I'm hoping that they do something more like big and involved with the multiplayer. Like it'd be real sweet if it was like a campaign of missions that you like. This week we're gonna all replay.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like they're doing like a different map every month for the operations stuff. It's not going to be so like in Battlefield 1 it was just like, hey, you are going to play it's just a map rotation basically. You can pick all these different maps to go through. Now it sounds like they're basically going to be like, no, this is the grand operations mode for the next month and you're going to play these two maps over and over, and then after this month is up we're going to switch to the next one, and then we're going to switch to so it might be like, hey, we're just going to walk through the war from 41 to 45 and just like do all these battles in order. Super ambitious. I don't know if that's actually how it'll pan out, but like that's what they made it sound like while we were there.
But and one thing, the other big change though is the server size, right? Isn't it huge now?
So they have a battle royale mode that they're adding in, which will be presumably 100 players. So if you want to get in on that, like all the teens, all those millennials.
Yeah. How many players are in a World Warship match, Corden?
I'm thinking maybe 11. I mean, if you do, I play pickup games, which are random games, and it's usually 11.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Battlefield's take on Battle Royale. Like, it's not a genre that I'm like super fond of, especially now. I feel pretty burned out on it, but they were already pretty close to Battle Royale size to begin with. Like, they've been 64 players for a decade now, so jumping to 100 is not a huge ask for them, I would imagine. Yeah. Whereas when Call of Duty says we're making a Battle Royale mode, and you're like, these were 16-player matches before. How are you going to jump to 100 players in the same Call of Duty match? I'm sort of doubtful on that end.
But on the other hand, Battlefield series, the multiplayer's not traditionally deathmatch. It's traditionally team-based.
Yeah.
So I'm real curious to see how they make that transition.
Yeah, it'll probably be all snipers all the time and just a horrible nightmare.
How do you integrate that into vehicle combat, too? Because
I mean, PUBG has vehicles in it, so I would assume it's similar where it'll just be Jeeps and stuff. But I'm not sure. Like, they haven't said anything. There was a GamesBeat write-up back in April where they actually leaked the Battle Royale mode, and they were very clear that thing is not coming at launch. Like, at the time, DICE was not even aware whether that was going to be in the game at all, and that's why we didn't see it at E3, I would assume. That's going to be like a December or a January update. Probably like their first big expansion, which in the past, like Battlefield 4, I think, they added the like warship mode that was like their version of the Titan thing from 2142. That was like a 6 months later expansion. I assume this Battle Royale thing is going to be similar, but we'll see. I don't know. It was cool.
We got some people asking about Anthem.
Yeah,
can you talk a little bit about Anthem?
Yeah, I could talk about Anthem. Brad read my write-up.
I did.
Anthem. Actually, Adam sat on a couch. So
I watched it.
For those of us who don't know what it is, because we only played one
so
game
Anthem
really
is BioWare. It's
God.
BioWare's take on Destiny, basically. So it's a shooter. It's third person, not first person, like Destiny. But otherwise, it's kind of the same. It's just like shoot a bunch of mob enemies and numbers pop out of them, and
you're in giant mechs that can fly around.
Yeah, you're in a super mobile suit, and like that's the part that I think is really cool. The movement in that game is fantastic. It's all Frostbite too, so it looks beautiful. Okay. It
did look really pretty.
You can like jump up in the air and then seamlessly transition into flying, and then transition from that into like hovering, and then transition back into flying once you're done shooting guys. Really cool, really beautiful. But I just don't, and Adam said this multiple times after we saw the demo, like, why is BioWare making this game? Because it doesn't feel like it's in their wheelhouse at all. And they keep trying to, like at EA Play, they kept like, oh no, there's a real deep story here. But then like we played the demo and there was like 2 minutes of a guy yelling nonsense at you and then nothing. Like it's just shooting guys for like 30 minutes or something like that.
I mean, somebody could say that there's a deep story in Destiny as well.
Yeah, if you wanted, I mean, and that's the thing. Like my problem with Destiny has always been the lore. When you read about the lore, it sounds 8,000 times cooler than actually playing that game. There's none of that comes through in the game itself. And Anthem,
I was confused as hell playing that for the first time. I never played Destiny 1.
Yeah.
When I played Destiny 2, they're like, oh, Zavala is sad now. I'm like, who is Zavala?
Yeah, who's Zavala?
Is that my problem?
and Anthem feels already like it's going to have the same problem. Like it's hard for me to say because they're only, it's an E3 demo. They're showing us like a one slice 5-minute or 20-minute demo, but it really, like, I came out of it being like, I don't even know what this story is about. Like there's nothing here to hook you, and that's a shame because BioWare's track record has not made me super confident in where they're going these days. Coming off the back of Mass Effect Andromeda, especially, another bad BioWare game seems like not what they need right now. But I don't know. That's about all we can say.
I agree 100% with your write-up. By the way, if you go to PCWorld.com, look back a week, all these games Hayden did excellent in-depth.
Yeah, there's 1,000. We did like, what did we, 35,000 words or something like that last week?
Yeah.
We had Brad and Adam and Martin and I were churning, so.
But like you were saying, the combat is really good, the gameplay feel. You said it's even better in Destiny. And that's the thing that I like about Destiny is the gameplay feel. That's the reason I still play it. I wish they would have shown more of the hook, like you were saying. I think that BioWare story would be the hook. Why would you play this instead of Destiny? But I think it's also encouraging that they show that, look, we can get the combat. We're BioWare, so the story will catch up.
Yeah, I just hope that's actually true. Like Mass Effect, they did very much the same thing where it was like the first time we played that game, it was a very combat-centric section, and it was like, but it's BioWare, the story will be great. And then I played it, and the story was not great, and it turned out that like the combat stuff was 70% of that game.
That's the first Mass Effect game I didn't finish.
Yeah, and I feel very worried that this is going to be similar, where it's going to be like 75% that combat and then 25% like, oh yeah, we had to tack some BioWare stuff onto this, and I'm just not sure. Like it's not out until next February or whatever, so they've got some time, but it wasn't super inspiring in the way that I was hoping, like, oh, we're finally getting hands-on with Anthem would be. Go ahead.
Sorry, I thought I was trying to time it so when you paused. That was the reason I was reading your Division 2 write-up, and you had much the same issue with that, which is a bummer for me because those are two games I was looking forward to because I'm a looter shooter fan. And Division 2 is adding all kinds of new stuff that look at him laughing.
Yeah, Gordon's like, looter shooter.
Looter shooter.
What is that?
But
could go both ways.
For gear. But yeah, so Division 2 is adding all kinds of cool stuff. They've added all kinds of cool stuff to make the game 100 times better over the lifetime of that game.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you couldn't see any of it in the demo at E3. It's just more of what you saw at the first Division 1 E3 demo years ago.
Yeah, I don't know why. Like, this has been like one of my big problems with E3 demos lately, and I understand they don't want to like give away their story. Like they, we don't want to give away like an end game mission plot point or whatever. But if the thing that your game was targeted for last time as being bad was the story, I don't understand why you would then come with an E3 demo that's completely devoid of showing any progress on that front. And that's like, The Division was just that. It was 10 minutes of just pure shooting. It was like an end game side activity that was like, hey, we're just going to take over the area around Air Force One, which had crashed into a swamp. It was the same as the trailer they showed during the Ubisoft press conference. All the set pieces in that game are beautiful. All the shooting seems tight. It like is fine, but like none of that is the stuff that is going to hook people again. Like the reason The Division got pinned the first time was because the story was awful. And then when they come back and they're like, hey, we fixed all the stuff that was wrong with the game side of it. You're like, well, great. But like, did you fix any of the stuff that people were actually mad about last time? For them to like put out an E3 demo that's not any of that is very bizarre to me. But
I was really hoping it was going to be like a story mission that shows off a character, and then it launches into one of those 8-man raids that they've been touting.
Just show me like the first story mission. Like that's all. I don't need you to show me like something real deep into the game. Just show me like the first story mission. Make me like super overpowered, so I don't really have to worry about anything. And it's just like run me through like here's the setup for our game. Like that's what I liked about the Hitman 2 demo at E3 this year was like they were just like here's a mission. Like you can just play the mission however you want. You can, you know, hit a dude in the back of the head with a fish and all this stuff. It like gave you like a real hook to get into that game and be like, oh, this is what I'm going to be doing. And like, this is the sort of story stuff that they're aiming for. These are the crowd techniques they're aiming for, all of that. But yeah, I don't know. A lot of weird demos this year that I felt like we didn't really like get a good view of what that game's going to be afterwards.
Well, we got a question from Elvis on YouTube. He's asking, which one of these games can he play with his cyber shoes?
Yeah, I want to talk about the peripherals you saw there because it looked
you
like.
want to talk about cyber shoes?
Yeah, it looked like the usual kind of like oil and snakeskin.
I don't know. So we have a video on the site for cyber shoes.
And what is it
it's
again?
Like the sequel to Cyberpunk, right? Cyber shoes?
Yeah. So back in the day, like I'm going to say like 4 years ago when VR was hot, we would go to conventions and see VR
Especially
treadmills.
PAX.
Yeah. It was like PAX. I even saw some at E3 for a while. Like they would have VR treadmills. There was the Omni was the big one. There was another one that I can't remember the name
didn't
of
you
now.
try one of those, Gordon? I feel like you did at that PAX we went to.
No?
Oh.
I don't. It does feel like.
I thought we did a video on
I don't
that.
think so.
And you would wear
If
like.
so, it wasn't great.
Yeah, they never were. They were like fine. It was like a cool proof of concept that needed a lot of work, but it was always like, are people really going to put this huge thing in their house for like $600
to simulate the walking?
Yeah, and basically it was just like a curved dome thing, and you would walk in it, and you were like strapped into a harness, and it was basically to solve the problem of like, hey, I don't like teleporting. It's not immersive. How can we make it so you can walk without just like walking into a wall in VR? And so this team, the Cyber Shoes team, has basically reverse engineered that in the opposite direction. So now instead of walking on a treadmill, you attach these like they look like ski bindings. You attach them to the bottom of your shoes, and then you sit in a chair and you can sort of like make a running movement with your feet, just like this. And it makes you run in the game.
And feel like a complete dork while you're doing it.
And it looks so stupid. And we saw like the name is bad. Like we saw the booth, and Adam and I were like, we need to do the Cyber Shoes video.
But it looked pretty effective.
But it works. That's like
except it almost worked a little too good.
Yeah,
though,
I mean, we were playing Doom VFR, which is like probably the wrong game to demo that stuff on because you're like running upstairs, and that's always hard in VR to begin with. And then it was hot in the convention center. So I got like a good nausea going on. We had like the post, yeah, we had the post VR burps going for like 5 or 10 minutes after the demo. But like
it was our last day too.
The tech itself worked completely fine. There were a couple moments where I thought I was going to run forwards and accidentally ran backwards because it's very sensitive, but it like worked surprisingly well. I could see it becoming a thing for people that really hate teleport movement in VR. I don't know. It's a strange thing.
I don't know. Paddling around. Don't office chairs normally have wheels on the bottom of them anyway? So if you're sitting there paddling around, then you'll actually be paddling around your living room.
Wheels on the bottom, right? And
it depends. It depends on like how hard you are hit. Like you barely have to touch those things to the floor to make it work. And I guess you could put a rug under your chair or something but yeah, it was surprisingly effective. They have a Kickstarter in like September, I want to say. It was probably the weirdest thing we saw of the show.
Well, I gotta say, what looked even more effective was it looked like they took an IKEA lamp, one of those ones that come over and then hang down. They took the lamp part out and they just ran the VR cables like up the light and then down onto the head, so it was like out of the way.
Yeah, it's like,
and you could circle all the way.
Yeah,
that was actually kind of cool.
That was probably the coolest part, because otherwise that cable would get tucked around this chair really fast.
Oh yeah,
or around your neck.
It seems a lot more viable than like, hey, here's a $600 treadmill to keep in your house. Like these things you could put in a closet when you were done with them, which seems a lot easier for most people.
Yeah.
Okay, what else? Hardware.
Actually, I mean, we're running up on time.
Cyberpunk.
Yeah,
we should talk about Cyberpunk.
Let's hit Cyberpunk, Metro, and Dying Light, which are the 3 games of the show. It's also very interesting because they are all from Eastern European developers, which really shows where the industry is at these days, I think. It's so I grapple with this because they're all also known, have been embroiled in labor disputes.
Eastern Europe.
There's a lot of like, hey, you work here and they work you to death and then you leave. So it's a little bit weird to be like, oh, all these games are some of the best games I've seen in the show, and also we're probably built off backbreaking labor. But man, they're all really cool.
First one?
Yeah, let's just talk Cyberpunk in case we run out of time. It's incredible.
Really?
Did you ever you didn't play Witcher 3? That doesn't fit your World of Warships lifestyle. Brad, did you finish Witcher 3 eventually?
I got like 95% of the way in. I didn't finish.
Yeah, and Adam hasn't played it, so
I got like 8 hours in.
I think I have 140, 150 hours in.
Yeah,
but I didn't get to the end.
Is there an M1 Garand in it?
No,
it's actually M1 Garand. Is the proper way to pronounce his name.
So Witcher 3, probably the game of the generation still. If I had to choose. Amazing RPG, did a lot of stuff with story that I didn't think was possible at the time, and I remember when I went and saw that demo at E3 2013, the first one I was at with Brad. I went and saw that Witcher 3 demo, and they were like, we're going open world, and having played the original Witcher and Witcher 2, I thought it was a huge mistake because everything was going open world at the time, and I was like, this is a story driven game, why are you going open world? They did it, and they made the best open world game of all time. So 5 years later, they finally show off Cyberpunk, which they announced back in like 2012, 2013. It's been forever, and they finally brought it to the show. They showed a trailer during Microsoft's press conference, I think. Yeah, because it was a big coup for them. Yeah, that was like their final thing.
Yep, last one.
The one that I thought was going to be Watch Dogs for 5 seconds. Yeah, they showed it off, but then they showed us behind closed doors like an hour of game footage. It was incredible. I think I tweeted this out the day that we saw it. I like literally some of the stuff they were doing in that demo, I didn't think we were at a point with hardware where we could make those things happen.
Really?
Yeah, and the wizardry that is on display there, like who knows how much of the game is actually in that demo at the moment, but they said they were running that demo on a single 1080 Ti at 4K 30 frames per second, which blows my mind because I honestly I would have thought that they were running that on like an SLI system, right. Running it at 1080 60 maybe, because the stuff that they were doing, when you see that behind closed doors demo, it makes you wonder, like, how are they so far ahead of everybody else in this respect? Like, if they could make that demo that I saw work on a single 1080 Ti at 4K, like, where is everybody else? Like, where is? So, one of the things that I said in the thing in our article was, like, you walk out of your apartment at one point. And first of all, it's first person, which is a big change for CD Projekt. But you walk out of your apartment and the scale of the city is just like it looks like an actual city. Like most of the times you go into a city in a game, right? And it's like, okay. It's like 3 streets and all the buildings are like 3 stories tall.
Think of Deus Ex.
Yeah, exactly. Like Deus Ex, even Mankind Divided, it was like a lot of like technological trickery to make that game work. And it was basically like, here's 15 streets and some like, 10-story buildings. In Cyberpunk, like we walked outside and it looked like a real city. There were maybe like 100, 150 NPCs walking around, all of which were like doing things. They weren't just like doing the, like video game thing where like everybody's doing generic actions or anything. Like there were people looking at storefronts. There were people holding hands. I think there were people like crossing the street, all this stuff that looked very much like if you walked out into a city today, like if you walked down to Union Square in San Francisco, you would see these people walking around. I've like literally never seen anything like it. It was like so far advanced over what I've played as somebody who plays games for a living.
So I've always been impressed by like GTA 5, and the city, the buildings and vehicles, the people. Is this
and
way beyond that?
That's the thing. Like GTA 5 was probably my standard before now. Like that, they put a lot of people on screen, but like a lot of those people were always doing just like they're just
walking,
filler, and they are not like named
phone.
characters or anything. They're just like they would just spawn people in and be like, here's a like as far as I know from what their demo was saying, like everybody in 2077, Cyberpunk 2077, is like a character with a background and like stuff to talk about with. Whether that holds true, like who knows? That's a lofty statement for them to make. But like that was the claim that it sounded like they made during the demo. Like, hey, all of these people are like people you can interact with. I didn't think again that we were at a point in hardware because you as somebody who plays a lot of games, you kind of just get to a point where like, oh, this is the limit. Like this is where we're at right now. And then occasionally like a game comes around. Like I compared it to when Assassin's Creed, the original Assassin's Creed, which that series has become, has sort of revitalized in the last year, but had become a joke because they just did the same thing for a decade, right? But I remember when the first Assassin's Creed trailer came out and it was like, this city is like a real city. There are crowds of like 30 people on screen at once. You can jump off the top of a building and like plummet all the way down to the ground. You can climb back up again right after. I remember seeing that trailer and just being amazed that we could pull something like that off on the 360. And like, that's how I felt again this time. Like, it's one of those like landmark demos where you go, oh my God, like this is the next, like this is where we're going to be in 5 years.
That's why I'm really disappointed that like every single game wound up releasing their own gameplay footage trailer for E3, and that is the one game that doesn't, and that's the one game where everyone's like, you need to see this.
Yeah, and they did that with The Witcher also. Like I remember Witcher 3, like we saw those behind closed doors demos, and I don't know if those ever came out, and if they did, I think it was way after the fact. So yeah, like I hope they put that footage out because I think it's really impressive. I've talked to people that were there that were like, so like my thing, with every E3 demo, it's like, hey, are they actually playing this live or is this just a recorded thing? I talked to some people there and they were like, no, I've had hands-on with Cyberpunk like at their office. Like it's actually a game, it runs, like they're not fooling you on that. So we didn't touch a controller and I didn't like go over to make sure the dude's monitor was actually doing the things that he said he was doing, but I'm prone to believe them. Again, if it was anybody but CD Projekt, I would have a lot more like, but like I remember feeling this way with Witcher 3 and just being like, I don't think they can pull this off. And then they did for the most part. Like the things that people nitpick on that game are like, that rock texture is not as good as it was in the demo. Like stuff that's minor.
That's what bums me out, because I wouldn't be surprised if part of the reason why they don't show this demo is because of all that moronic reaction to the E3 downgrade.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like that stuff was so minor. It was all just like textures and stuff, like optimization stuff. So yeah, like I almost believe they can pull it off because they've done this before. Like they've made me think this isn't possible and then pulled it off. Not just like made it okay, but like made a great game out of Witcher 3. So
that makes me feel like it's going to be like a 2020 plus release, like a next gen console kind of release.
Yeah, I thought so too, but they said they're targeting this gen, so who knows? They said that game's going to run on PS4 and Xbox One, which I am very doubtful about.
State.
But yeah,
there's a couple of people asking, did they mention anything about DX12, Vulcan, anything
no,
like
nothing technical. It was pretty much just a straight game walkthrough. Okay. We just talked about, I mean, there's all sorts of cool stuff we could talk about in that game too. Like, it is first person, and all of your neuro mods, because it's Cyberpunk, all of your like mods are like done in first person view. So we replaced our eyeballs. And you like the camera or the doctor like leaned in and like took our eyeball out, and the screen went black. And then the like cyber eyeball that they were replacing it with was on a table nearby, and so it clicked on, and our camera view was like that eyeball that he was replacing, and so he like picked up the eyeball and put it in, and then the camera after that was like normal. But it was like a cool touch. It's like they have an attention to detail in their games that you just don't see very often. Like I feel like Ubisoft is one of the only other studios or the only other publishers where I feel like they really get like into the details on some of those games. Like for all their faults, I think Division and Assassin's Creed Origins and some of those like really big tentpole games from them are incredibly detailed. Cyberpunk is the same way. It's just like everything is just lathered in, you know, fake advertisements, all sorts of like cool billboards, in-game, you know, ads for like the Neuromod people, and it's just like a really cool universe.
Okay. We are running short of time. Let's get to the last two other games you want to talk about, unless, Brad, you got a question?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, so Metro, not much to talk about there, except they're making open world Metro, which is really cool. I really love 2033 and Last Light. I don't know. Brad, did you play those ones?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. That's more Metro in an open world to me is just like Battlefield 5, Battlefield 1 in World War II. That alone.
Yeah.
I'm interested in it just because of that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like all those Metro guys, like at the beginning were ex-Stalker people. Like that's where 4A came from, was the Stalker devs. And so it's kind of cool because it's to me, it's like watching Metro go full circle. Like they took the elements of Stalker that people liked and turned it into a highly linear shooter for a couple of years. And now they're like, screw it. Like, we'll just make another Stalker game. So yeah, that seemed really cool. I had a lot of fun with it. I think Game Informer did like a blowout on that a couple months ago. So if you're looking for footage, that's the place to find it. I think they have like hours and hours of footage over there. But yeah, that was cool. And then Dying Light 2, which was, I think, one of my biggest surprises at E3.
Why?
I was very excited to see it. There was no whispers that thing was occurring whatsoever. That's why.
Yeah, we saw at GDC they were making a battle royale Dying Light mode, and like we had a lot of fun with it. Actually, we played it and like had a good time. But that was, I thought, like when they showed that, I then thought, okay, so Dying Light 2 has to be like a year or two off. Because they wouldn't just like show this mode and that they're selling standalone and then like announce a sequel at E3. And then they did. And it's like Chris Avellone, who wrote Planescape and a lot of the Obsidian games and is just a pretty phenomenal writer in the games industry in general.
Chris Avellone is the guy where a bunch of the modern CRPG games, like when they're on Kickstarter, one of their extra funding tiers is, hey, we can afford Chris Avellone.
Yeah. Like Divinity Original Sin 2 had Chris Avellone do some character work on it. He's like a very prolific guy these days. And then they also, when we showed up for our demo, they then were like, hey, actually, we have part of the Witcher 3 writing team on our team now. And it was specifically the people that made the Bloody Baron quest line, which if you played Witcher 3 is like the most iconic part of that game, maybe. It's like cool because the original Dying Light was one of the best zombie games I ever played in terms of the movement was great and the combat was phenomenal. But the story was garbage and it was just like very tedious to get through a lot of the times. There was a lot of like, hey man,
such bad acting too.
Yeah. And it was like, hey man, cross the entire map to go get this thing and then come back. And that was like most of the mission structure in that game. This time, like it sounds like they're like really doubling down on the writing. They have like all sorts of crazy, like basically like the choice stuff that a lot of games do these days, where it's like, hey, you can either kill this guy or save this guy, but done on a level where it's like affecting entire districts of the city that you're in. So there was the mission that they showed us. You could either side with these rebels who were camping out in this water tower, or you could side with the Peacekeeper faction. And the effect was basically like, if the Peacekeepers take over the water tower, they give away water for free to everybody in the district, but it becomes like a militia state, basically, like you're under martial law.
Oh.
And if you steal, you get your hand chopped off. If you steal food, you get hanged. Like, it gets like kind of bleak, but everybody that behaves gets water. The other one was like, if you side with the rebels, they actually like turn it into a capitalist nightmare and sell the water. So you like walk into the district and there are people just like, I'm so thirsty, sitting on the side of the road. But then they like cut you in on the profits, and also because the Peacekeepers didn't move in, there's like a whole black market that like appears in that district. It looks like incredibly ambitious, especially for a story and just like a zombie game.
That makes a lot of sense.
Gordon says interesting, but his face does not say interesting.
Yeah, he's like,
no,
he's like boring.
He's like, there's no 50 cal guns on this.
Where's your M2? I just.
The thing I like about Dying Light 2 is it's the opposite of what we were complaining about with Division 2 and Anthem.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, our story sucks. Hey, Chris Avellone, take the stage on Microsoft.
Yep. Yeah. And that's how that whole Behind Closed Doors demo was too. It was like 45 minutes long, and they like showed a little bit of combat, but it was probably like 5 minutes out of that whole demo, and the rest of it was just like, here's our writing. Like, we're really trying to make good on this. Like, we heard everybody's complaints last time. We really want to like make a game that's not just fun to play. Like, I mean, it's amazing how many players they still have in that game. That game is like 3 or 4 years old. They still were like, we have 500,000 players every day, which is like mind blowing. Like, there are games that are only a year old that don't have that many players in them anymore. So yeah, like it's like really encouraging to see them and Metro and Cyberpunk and be like, oh, there's some really cool stuff coming out of Eastern Europe and coming out of these devs that are kind of like B-tier devs, because for a long time that B-tier died off and we weren't getting any of that anymore. It's really amazing to see, like, those are our 3 games that show basically, and all 3 of them come from like devs that are kind of semi-independent or like work in weird parts of the country or parts of the world that you don't necessarily think of as traditional game development hubs. Really encouraging to see stuff like this coming out of those studios.
I guess it's the independence. They don't have to, like, maybe it's because they don't have Overlord saying you need to develop a battle royale mode for Microsoft Word. Right? I mean, it just kind of, it's sad. It does seem like sometimes the games industry replicates Hollywood and let's just give them the exact same thing we gave them last time.
Yeah, and everybody trend chases, and it becomes like a real problem for a couple of years, and then all those studios end up going bankrupt because nobody wants to play anything except PUBG and Fortnite anyway.
Maybe if they can, I know, because somewhere at a studio or a publisher, they're going like, how could we combine Dust Level from Counter-Strike with Battle Royale?
Yeah.
Like Battle Royale in Dust, right? Just like, it would just be the end.
I mean, we were laughing. They have Mavericks Proving Grounds. Is that the game that was like, it's 1,000 person Battle Royale? And I was like, what the? How?
Sure.
The only weapon is a meat cleaver.
Is it really?
No.
That'd be funny.
It's wild.
Yeah, I don't get
Video games. They're still coming.
Too frenetic.
We're running out of time. If we can, Brad, can we take 3 questions?
I have 6 minutes left, and then I gotta go.
All right, rapid fire. This first one
is gonna overtake him.
Yeah, right. Sticking out his beard. This one's for you directly, Brad. Rusty Shackelford is asking if you've run into any issues about the Deep Cool Tesseract besides cable management. Case.
No, my that's the one that I helped build my friend's PC in. He's had no issues whatsoever. He's gone through some part upgrades and no issues. I mean, it's not going to be, impeccable cable management and stuff. That's an affordable budget case. But like I said, I'm really impressed by the quality that you get for $40 out of that case.
Awesome. The next one, it's VD21 TVI. Oh, no, TV. I want to get a gaming PC that is MSI that is upgradable, but I don't know whether to get an MSI MI3 or MSI Trident. Which is better? He's targeting 1440 at 144 hertz.
I don't know the configuration of those off the top of my head. That'll make a big difference. But 1440 at 144 hertz, you're probably going to want at least a GTX 1070 or Vega 56 or a GTX 1080 or
yeah, I
Vega
would say
64.
1080 probably. That's
yeah, if you want to max it out.
Like
yeah.
I have a 1080 Ti at 144 hertz, and if I want to max out games, I'm still not hitting 144 hertz these days.
Yep.
And one last thing there, at Computex MSI did have an updated version. They're going to sell both alongside each other, but the newer one is basically what would be considered a classic micro tower. So it'll take standard components, standard size video cards. The Trident really was console size. This new sort of Trident Plus will be even bigger. So
yeah, Trident's a cool machine.
Yeah.
And then CMP is asking, any idea why we didn't hear anything regarding the big format gaming displays at Computex? And I will mention that we did see them at the NVIDIA booth at E3, but they weren't hyping anything up. Did you guys see anything at Computex?
I saw it. It was actually at the NVIDIA keynote and the booth, and NVIDIA, Jensen, I think, said end of the summer. Later on, they said actually more like end of the year. So it is going to come. They say it's going to be real.
Selling them for big format game. Never mind. I'm
BFGD.
It looked like they had shrunk the. Isn't that what you said? It looked like they had shrunk the power supplies a little bit. So they weren't.
So it looked a little more. It looked a little more real.
Yeah, so it was real because when we saw it at CES, it was run off of an ATX power supply.
Yeah.
Outside. This one actually was internal power supply. It looked a lot closer to a real product, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's really going to come this year. Jensen himself said, "Hey, this year, man, it's going to come this year."
Yeah, I don't believe it.
We ain't going to have the video card to tell you that's going to go with it. But
all right, one more last question, real quick. Everyone's asking, VR at E3, is VR dead? Hayden.
I wouldn't say it's dead. I just think that it's in a very niche spot, which is where it should have been to begin with. Oculus was there. They were doing stuff, but it's just not. I think Insomniac actually announced a new VR game during E3, but it's just not. Yeah, it's niche. It's going to be niche for like 5 more years, 10 more years at least before that stuff becomes mainstream. And honestly, like that's what it should have been to begin with.
And this is a normal pattern for everything. You get hype phase, backlash phase, and then actual phase.
Yeah,
so we'll see.
That's the thing. I think there's too much invested in it for it to go away entirely. Whether it ends up taking over, who knows? But they're still working on it. Oculus still has that Santa Cruz prototype, which we'll see again in September or whatever when Oculus Connect happens. So yeah.
All right, cool.
I'm going to get us out of here because look, this light is rapidly eating Brad. He's dissolving in the light.
So
check back to filming this time of day, I guess.
Check back next week for your fix of PC Talk on the Full Nerd. For audio listeners, subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. Send questions and comments to thefullnerd at PCWorld.com. Also, leave a review on iTunes for the podcast. Every time you do, somebody creates a new Battle Royale mode. Thanks for coming. I'm your host, Gordon Young with Brad Charkis.
Adios.
Special guest, Hayden Dingman.
Hey, bye, everybody.
And hey, God, I'm so gone. I need coffee. Adam will turn us off.
Hey, Gordon. Hey.
Yeah, hey.